I'm Marion Flynn, Director of the Library Services here from 1983 to 1989.
Okay.
And I'm Barbara Natale, and I was hired as a reference librarian in November of 1982, and I became library director in 1990.
Okay. So Marion, how did you learn about MCC?
Well, I knew about it for years because I started working in the system in 1970 at Greater Hartford. And so I knew and I knew Manchester was always the flagship of the community college system. But before I came here, I was also at Norwalk. So I had 2 other experiences in the system before I arrived as a result of a search for a new director after Margaret Owens retired in 1898. Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you have to go through a search committee, or?
Yes, I remember the search committee very well. Bob Bardee was president, and I remember I wrote a resume on 1 page. Sharon Bretschneider, I think I got the job because it was a 1-page resume. So.
And Barbara, how about you? How did you learn about MCC?
Well, I was born and brought up in Manchester. And I was looking for a job. I saw an ad in the New York Times, and I was working in Windsor, Connecticut, in the high school and junior high. And they had just had a reorganization of the school system, and I was in a junior high school and really loved teaching older kids. And so I decided this looked perfect for me. So I applied for it and had a search committee, and still remember that process. And Margaret Owens was the director when I was hired, and I was taking Sharon Bretschneider's place, who had she had been a reference librarian here, and she had left for another job. Okay.
So Marion, tell me a little bit about the college from the time you started to the time you retired.
Okay. I remember coming here and going into the building that was on the East Campus. The library was one of the old buildings, and I was, to me, after my experience in Greater Hartford, which had moved into a big, beautiful library, and then coming to Norwalk, which again hadn't yet moved, but later moved into this beautiful library. I came here and I saw we were in the low building, but in the near future was the low building. And so it was just, when I saw what the plans were, I thought, this is unbelievable. So much that I never dreamed I would ever be in such a beautiful building. And now look what you have.
Were you involved in the planning for the low building library, or was that already in
No,
the process?
it was not. And as Barbara, I think, can tell more about the planning, because you knew more about it. I didn't know that it wasn't planned as a library until Barbara just told me this. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, was that because of the accreditation that they make us build a new library up in the low building?
I think that it was planned as a multi-purpose building, and that student services were going to be upstairs. And so when I got here, and it was then, by that time, it was both floors were going to be dedicated to the library. But the second floor wasn't load-bearing, so it had a little problem with shelving books. But there was no reason, as Barbara said, why it wasn't meant to be a library. So we were very fortunate in that respect. So.
Okay. And can you remember any your colleagues? Anybody stand out?
Oh, my goodness, yes. I remember particularly one of the staff members, Trish Hummel, because one of the things that we had to do was move the books from the East Building here into the Low Building. And it was a matter of all of these empty shelves, how many were going to go on each shelf. She had it all figured out. She managed the whole thing. It was a great experience. She was fantastic.
And did you do that over a summer or over a long weekend? How much time did you have to move from
home? I can't remember. Barbara, do you remember?
I don't. I think it was like a week
or
something, but we had to be really organized. We had a company coming to take the boxes that we had filled and bring them up here.
I had done
Yeah,
this
yeah.
when Greater Hartford moved from the Colt building into the Phoenix building in downtown Hartford, but that helped a little bit. But Trish helped more than anything.
Yeah,
so.
she was great.
And what about the culture of the college in your time here? Did it change a lot from when you first started to
Oh
when
my!
you retired?
Oh my goodness! It was simply amazing because we were just beginning library automation. I mean, we were in, and what was amazing was that I had been involved in the planning for a statewide library system, and the one was that in this area was called Success, and it was the first in the country that was a multi-type library system, and so that was very, very exciting. And so while I was here, we did get a grant that helped us make all of our all of the books in the collection become in data readable form. But also we started cataloging, and the biggest thing that happened when I was here was giving up that huge card catalog. That was just amazing. So.
Was that hard for some people to give up the cards? Because I know,
I don't
when you
think
automate
so.
things.
I think
Well,
Barbara knows more about that because
Yeah.
when I was gone, she went away to different colleges and different research facilities to learn about the databases, which, I mean, it was a miracle that all of this was so accessible. We were
That's right.
all concerned about it, but Barbara knows more about the nuts and bolts of
Yeah.
all of this. So.
I remember when we closed the card catalog, we draped it with black and we put "Rest in Peace" on there. And there were still mostly faculty, not so much the students, but mostly faculty would still come in there and get under the black covers and look in the card catalog, because that's what they knew how to do. So did you want to talk about anything else with the changing of the...
So tell me a little about,
Yeah.
you started as a reference librarian and
I
you ended
did.
up as a director. So
I
how
did.
was that changed?
Well, you talked about how the college has changed, and I want to say it changed in some ways. It changed as far as technology went. But as far as the sense of community on the campus, I don't think that changed, and I hope it still hasn't changed. When I first started here in the East Campus, it was very welcoming. And I felt good about working here. I felt good about coming into work every day. And I remember a conversation with Marion right after she had started about what it means to work for a community college system. I hadn't worked for a community college before, and so this was kind of a new experience for me. And I felt really good when you talked about, how good you felt to be working with students who were taking advantage of a second chance with their life, So anyway, it felt good to be here. Then we moved up to the low building, and it was still a college with a lot of connections, a lot of feeling of community. We had faculty, maybe about 50 or 60 classes a semester coming to the library. So there was a close connection with the faculty. And also Marion was on the Academic Affairs Council, and I was too eventually when I became director. And that, I think, made a big difference, to be part of the Academic Affairs Council and feel like what you're doing is part of the teaching that actually happens on this campus, And so I loved the idea that we learned how to do strategic planning under Louise Corwin. And, everybody used to moan and groan about that. And when I went back and did that for the library, everybody moaned and groaned too. But but I think it was a useful thing. And I think basically the staff were glad that we did it, just like I was glad we did it for the campus.
Your transition from reference to director, did you have to go through another search committee, or did you?
Yes. Yes, we had to go through another search committee with some other people who were also interested in being director, and I was very grateful for that opportunity to be the director. Loved the job, loved the reference job too. But this was a real challenge. I was hired as director in 1990. The staff took turns being interim director after Marion left, and I was hired as director in 1990, and right after that, Dean Bevere started looking for people to be on the master planning committee. And so I don't know if you want to get into that now.
Sure.
I just, before we do that, though,
Yep.
I want to say something else about technology and how it changed. When I first started here as a reference librarian, we were using paper indexes to periodicals, and we used to have to teach the students how to use these indexes to find good information on all kinds of subjects. A little bit later, we started doing online searching, and Marion sent me to some training sessions with Dialogue and BRS were the things we used. The problem was only the librarian could do it because they charged you by the second, I think.
Wow.
So you had to learn how to put a search strategy in there, what databases to pick, and how to get out of there really fast because you don't want to run up any bills for the library. So we couldn't leave that for students to do. Then the CD-ROMs came in, and the students could do those because you could just sit at the computer and find the information on the CD-ROM. So that was a big improvement. And then Netscape came in, which I believe you would know this. This meant that it was connected to the internet, right?
Yes.
Yep. And so once that happened, then the whole world opened up. Now, the emphasis, I'm sure, with the students teaching in the library, how to do research, I'm sure the emphasis is on how to evaluate your information more than how to find it.
Right, yes.
You know, because you get information. It's just like Googling at home, you know. I mean, you get a lot of junk and you get a lot of good stuff, and you have to be able to pick that out. And so I'm sure that's what they're teaching now. I also want to say something about the Low building. It was a beautiful space compared with the D building on the East Campus, but not only was it not load-bearing, but it had no classroom. So that when we were teaching these 50 to 60 classes a semester that came into the library, we were teaching them right in the middle of all the students trying to get quiet studying done. And the students were not happy about that. And when we did a survey in connection with the master planning process, we asked students to complete sentences and put them in a suggestion box like, I wish the library would, or I wish the library would not, or whatever. And about 90% of the complaints that we got about the library were about the noise. They needed a quiet study space, and we needed a classroom to teach in. And so those were the two things that came, the most important things to me that came out of this whole planning process. Do you want me to go on about master planning? Okay.
Yes.
When I volunteered to be on the master planning committee, but I wasn't sure that the library was going to be part of that. But I wanted to do it even so, because I had been involved in something sort of like this back in Windsor and really enjoyed it. And so the master planning committee and some people from the master planning committee started looking for architects to do a master plan for the campus. And we went to New York City with Steve Bidstrup from the central office. And Tom, did you go on any of those?
I went to Boston. I'm going to Boston.
Yeah, okay. Boston was another place we went to. And finally selected Stecker, LeBeau, Arneal, and McManus, which we refer to as SLAM, as the architects to do the master plan. And I was looking at the master plan the other day because I had taken one home with me, a draft copy. And it's amazing how close this campus is to what the master plan had suggested that the campus become. It really, it's wonderful. So they went through the master planning process, which meant you took the educational plan. You've talked to people about this. You know all this stuff. So after the master planning process was finished, and all of us had, the staff in the library had worked on adjacencies so that we would know what needed to be near each, and all the staff participated in this. They were terrific. They had ideas. They had enthusiasm. And they put things together on an adjacencies board so that we knew what the staff wanted to see in our new library. And after all of this, and the visits to the libraries and everything, we found out right in, I believe it was 1984, 1994. We found out that it was not going to be in the governor's budget. And so, meanwhile, one of the students from Enfield had written me a note saying, if you ever need support from the state legislature, the person you should talk to is Fred Jelsey, who is the representative from Enfield, and because he was on the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee in the state legislature, and he had a lot of pull. So I mentioned this to Tom, and then, as with usual enthusiasm and go-get-it attitude, he said, let's go see him. And so we did, and brought some pictures of the campus and a video, and he was so amazed that we were still functioning in buildings that were past their, I think they were, way past.
Yeah.
Like I think
Right.
30 years. They were 10-year buildings, and I think it was getting close to 30 years before they were replaced. He really was a very strong supporter. And it did get back into the governor's budget. I don't know how much he had to do with it, but the poor man died in 2005, I believe, and so we can't thank him now. But I'm very appreciative of his efforts helping us with that. Then we had to find an architect to do the design. And after much review of a whole bunch of architects, he selected Centerbrook. And they did a great job. I just stopped in the library before to talk to the library staff. I hope you feel this way about the media center and the TV studio and all that. I just stopped to talk to some people on the library staff before we came in here, and they say that it's working, that there's the quiet study area in the fireside commons, which is now not usually used by the college for other stuff. Right. So the students have it back. And she said they really like that space, and when it's used by somebody else, they get very upset. So they're still, it's working. She said that the spaces are working. The staff seems happy with what's going on there and how it's functioning. So I think it's wonderful. I mean, I walked through this building and I'm just amazed. Mm-hmm. It's really wonderful. And I also can't say enough about Tom Bevere as far as his leadership with the whole master planning process. He was with it right from the beginning. He was enthused, he was dedicated, and he was willing to do, whatever needed to be done. And he listened. And so, in fact, he went to Harvard to a seminar on library planning with me. Came to Baruch College with the library staff and to see how they set up their teaching area in the library. And it was a wonderful experience, the whole thing.
Any other colleagues that you remember that stand out to you? Or?
Oh, good grief. I remember so many. We had so many faculty coming in and using the library that I remember them all. And, sometimes I may forget a name or two, but how about John Murray? I remember you because you were very supportive and did everything we needed you to do.
You were my boss for a while, too.
Yeah. And I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Any students that stand out from
the one from Enfield that suggested that we talk to Fred Jelsey, but I wish I could remember her name, and I can't. But the students who worked for the Student Senate were really terrific people, and I wish I could remember their names too. But it's been like close to 15 years since I retired.
Any funny stories or anything like that?
I'm not good at telling funny stories.
Marion?
How about you?
Do you remember anything? Any funny stories or incidents?
I can't remember any funny stories, but there are so many people that stand out, and I remember. As you said, Tom Bevere was amazing in the support. I mean, I remember that he took over as Dean of Administration shortly after I came, and so he was very calm and patient with me when I brought up the floor is not low. Yeah. But I just found that, having worked at 3 colleges in the system, to come to Manchester was just a marvelous experience. I mean, it was just, I was when so many of us retired at the same time in October 89, I thought, oh, the college is going to change. But, I think what's been great is that the retired faculty, now retired, still meet and still offer us opportunities to participate. And I still come to the library. And what's amazing is that I was telling Barbara, I live at the Arbor's now in a retirement community, and we are visited by the Beethoven Chorus, which has retired faculty from MCC. So it's been a wonderful experience.
Well, that's all the questions. Anything else you want to add, or
let me just look at my cheat sheet
about, or
here.
you wanted to?
No, I just the library staff through this whole thing was absolutely fantastic, and they still are. I mean, a lot of them are still there, and every time I come back, I live in Cape Cod now, so I don't get back very often. But when I do, it feels like going home again. Yeah.